Hi guys, this is just a quick summary of some of the things that we did in Monday's class when we were laying out the Globe and Mail newspaper, the two-page spread from the newspaper in InDesign. So I have a blank InDesign document in front of me, and you remember that when you first launch InDesign, you get a choice of what kind of document you want to make, or you get a choice of document, book, or library. You always want to choose document, and then you'll get that dialog box that allows you to set your preferences or to set up the document. And so if you've already done that and you want to make some changes, you just have to go to File and then go to Document Setup, and you'll get that same dialog box. Just be aware of this thing right here where it says Fewer Options. If more often than not, you might see that and you might think that you don't have access to everything that you want to change. Just make sure that you've clicked the More Options button and you'll get the lead in the slug. The important things to know about in this section is you always want to have a start page of 2 and you always want to have facing pages clicked. Now of course that's not literally the case all the time, but for what we're doing in this class you want to make sure those two things are done unless I tell you to do otherwise. If you don't click facing pages, what will happen is your pages get separated like this, so you just have single pages one after the other, kind of like a Microsoft Word document, but we want to have them set up so they face each other. So I'm just going to re-click that. And the same thing here, if you have a start page of 1, it'll set page 1 off by itself, and then it will put the rest of the pages, depending on the length of the document, together. So you just want to make sure that you start at page 2. So I'm just going to click that. Now, if you're unhappy with your the units that are in your rulers, if it's in picas or something that you don't quite understand yet, you can change that simply by going to InDesign and clicking under Preferences, the Units and Increments. And you can change it right here. Mine's already at inches, so I'm going to leave it the same. But sometimes you'll find that it just goes back to something like picas, and so it just changes itself sometime. So we're good with that right there. I didn't, in the initial dialog box, change columns. You can do that there, but if you forgot to do that or if you want to add columns later, you can just go to Layout, Margins and Columns, and then you can put your columns right there. And so you can see this is the setup that we had from Monday's class with 5 columns per page with a gutter in between. And now I'm going to click the Type tool and I'll make a text box that stretches across the entire width of the 5 columns. I'm just going to resize it a little bit right there, and I'll type some text in. Oops. Okay, I just did something wrong there, so I'm going to make sure that I'm on the primary option tool. It just went crazy on me. We'll go back to normal. There we go. This just shows you sometimes you got to be careful about what you've pressed. Okay, it's doing it again. Okay. Well, that's because I have to be in the text tool. And I'll type hello world, and I'll just make it using the default point sizes up to 72 so you can see it. Now something that you should remember to do that maybe a lot of people didn't do yesterday was I have this big text frame, but I want to make sure that it's the shape of the actual text that I have inside it, and let's say I wanted to center that for some reason. The reason you want to do this is because I just think it's a psychological thing. You want to be aware of the available white space that you have around there. So just in terms of designing and laying out, I think it's important. Because if you have something like that, like you might just not be aware of the space that you're working with right here. You might look on the other side of the frame and see that, but you might not see that. So it's just a thing to be mindful of right there. Another issue with text frames is, let's say you have that frame and you don't have the text that you actually want to put in the frame available yet, but you want to see what it looks like so you can lay stuff out on the page. You can just go to Type and then Insert White Space. I'm sorry, you don't want to do that. You want to go to Fill with Placeholder Text and put it right there, and it just fills it with that gibberish text. Now, some of you may have encountered this. There's a little a little red box right there with a cross in it, and what that means is that you have overflowing text. And as an aside, if you look down here, you'll see a little red circle that says 1 error. So that's also another place that's telling you you've made a mistake, and in this case, it's the overflowing text. Now you can solve that a couple of different ways. You can just make the box bigger if you have the opportunity to do that and it matches your design and layout intentions. But if you can't do that, you can just click on the little red button right there and your cursor is loaded with the text, and you can just click and it makes a new box. It just kind of shapes it that way, and it's still a little overflowing, so I'm just going to make that a little bigger there. and then you can move it around. There's different ways you can manipulate this text and make it link to different frames and stuff like that, and maybe we'll look at that in a future class. Other than that, I don't know if there's anything else I want to talk about. I'm just going to leave it right there. And just a reminder that if you want to, I know some of you didn't like working with all the guides and things. I think it's important that you learn how to do that. But if you want to see what your document's going to look like without the guides, just go down to the bottom button, to the view button there, and change it from normal to preview. And then you get a sense of what your content will look like without all the guidelines. So that's that, and I'll see you in class on Wednesday.